Greetings. I hope you had a great week, cadets. Here we are with our second half of our leadership traits 8 through 14. What I want to do is I want to recap just a little bit about what we learned in our previous leadership traits class and then dive right in. Like before, this lesson will explain and provide examples of the 14 leadership traits used in the Marine Corps and within our Marine Corps JROTC program. Your objectives will remain the same: to provide a definition and an example of each of the 14 leadership traits, and to describe how the 14 leadership traits apply to the JROTC program. Your key words of stature, compassion, and demeaning remain the same. Your key words of condescending and discretion also remain the same. As a reintroduction, I want to remind you that the 14 leadership traits are qualities of thought and action, which, if demonstrated daily through your activities, will help Marines and cadets earn the respect and confidence and loyal cooperation of other Marines and other cadets. It's very important that you understand the meaning of each of these leadership traits and how to develop them so that you can set what goals you need in order to become a better leader and a better follower. So here we are back at our acronym. Let's see if anybody remembers what the first 7 of our 14 leadership traits are as it relates to memorizing them per our acronym. J to the J to the did to the die to the buckle. Again, don't know who JJ is. I don't even know how you tie a buckle, but let's dive deep in here. J, justice. J, judgment. D, dependability. I, integrity. D, decisiveness. T, tact. I, initiative. E, endurance. B, bearing. U, unselfishness. C, courage. K, knowledge. L, loyalty. And E, enthusiasm. Again, you don't have to memorize these in any particular order. And if you get endurance ahead of enthusiasm or enthusiasm ahead of endurance, that's fine. As long as you have the D's and the D's and the E's and the E's and the J's and the J's, it doesn't matter what order that you recite them during inspection. The biggest thing is not just to be able to memorize them and recite them, most importantly, to understand them and apply them in your daily life. In our previous class, we ended with initiative. So let's roll into the 8 of our 14 leadership traits in the order that they appear per our acronym, and that would be endurance. There are 2 types of endurance: physical and mental. Endurance is the ability to endure hardships such as hunger, cold, heat, fatigue, and stress. When you've got long study hours, you got to make sure that you're preparing for an exam. In order to do that, you're going to need endurance. Not a Red Bull, not a Monster, but physical and mental endurance. And you'd be surprised at how one will help out with the other. I firmly believe that your mental wellness is a direct reflection of your physical wellness. If you're not physically healthy, it will impact your mental ability to prepare for a test or just to get through a normal workday. Mind, body, and spirit, they're all tied together as it relates to your mental and physical wellness. In order to endure and overcome, you need to make sure that you're developing a lifestyle of health and wellness, and that you're establishing good disciplined habits now so that as a leader, you can take those self-discipline habits and enforce them and apply them at a unit discipline level. It's easy to get that quick caffeine rush, and it's easy to go out and run a little bit here and there and then take 5 days off and recover. But if you are not managing your body, managing your mind, and managing your spirit on a daily, if not hourly basis, then your endurance, both mental and physical, will suffer.
I've had to operate on 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night for days on end. Being mentally and physically exhausted, but having Marines depend on me to lead them, to guide them, to do my job so that we can provide fire support in Fallujah. Endurance is very important.
To keep going when conditions are tough, when you're exhausted, when you're expended, you're injured, you feel you can't go on. It's because you look to your right and you look to your left, and those Marines on either side of you are going to depend upon you to continue to go.
I had a recruit once, and he wanted to quit because he couldn't do anything right. And that recruit made it through recruit training because he listened to the one thing I told him, which was never quit nor give up.
The Marine Corps is constantly pushing you and pushing you and pushing you until the point where you feel like you can't do it anymore and you just want to give up and quit. But once you push through that and then you take a look back and you realize, I just did that, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
It's more than just wanting to go forward. It's that you know that you have to, both for yourself, for your job, for your family, for your friends.
That mental ability to drive on is what's made the Marine Corps successful for years and years.
Marine Corps is going to put you in challenging times, whether it be peacetime training or even in combat. If you don't have mental, physical, and emotional endurance, you're not going to be able to accomplish your job.
Let's talk about bearing and how having good bearing will help you in your daily routine, not just in ROTC, but in all your classes across the board and in your life as well. You want to create a favorable impression by your personal appearance, how you carry yourself, how you act in a manner that is becoming of an officer, of a Marine, and in your case, a cadet. Bearing comes in many ways and many shapes and many forms. Your personal confidence and how you exude a lack or a lot of confidence in front of others is going to go a long way, especially when your subordinates are looking to you as a leader. They want to see that you're confident in your bearing so that they can rely on you. You don't have to say a word, but how you carry yourself and your demeanor is going to go a long way with those cadets. Controlling your emotions in public is very, very important. Some of the ways that you will be able to manage this is through our uniform inspections and through our questioning and answering, through being called on in class or during training to get out in front of a group of individuals and teach something, even if you weren't prepared for it. Our uniform inspections, by design, are used to prepare you for job interviews, to prepare you for your public speaking classes within ROTC, to prepare you for public speaking in other classes within Mount Juliet High School. It's very important to maintain your bearing. Now, are there some funny things that go on here in the ROTC program? Absolutely. Do Marines, do cadets love to have a good time and bust each other's chops and crack up? Absolutely. The biggest thing that I would want you to take away from bearing is knowing that there's a time and a place for everything, and having that mental discipline to know when and where to maintain your bearing is very important, especially as a young person who sits down in front of someone who's going to potentially hire them. Very, very important to maintain your bearing. It's very important to carry yourself in your uniform with pride, dignity, and respect. Your personal appearance, not having a haircut, not wearing your ski shirt properly, not having creases in your uniforms, dirty boots, dirty shoes, no shave, those all tie in to your bearing. It's not just how well or poor you control your emotions. It's how disciplined you are with your pride in the way you walk and the way you talk.
We know we are the best, and everyone should exude that same mindset.
Bearing tells me a lot about the character of a Marine, whether they can show emotion at the right time and when it's acceptable and when it's not acceptable.
You know a Marine when you see a Marine. They hold their head high. They carry themselves with such confidence.
Bearing was the first thing that I noticed about Joe when we first went to family day when he was graduating from boot camp. I had never seen him stand so straight, so attentive to every little fine detail. And I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Everyone knows me as a Marine just by the way I walk, by the way I talk, by the way I carry myself in uniform. I'm very proud.
I can say without question has been a huge factor in the opportunities that I've had after I left the Marines.
Unselfishness is a leadership trait that's pretty important to me personally. As a cadet and a leader, you must put the needs, the comfort, and the advancement of your subordinates before your own. A lot of times, human nature, you'll hear me talk about this a lot, creeps in, and we as leaders sometimes will, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, make others look bad to make ourselves look good in order to gain favor or maybe move up the food chain or the ladder. Now, you cannot do this, not as a leader. Unselfishness calls for a lot of late nights. It calls for a lot of early days. It, as a Marine, can end up being a phone call in the middle of a night and having to roll over to a Marine's house and take care of something or help them with something. Sometimes, a lot of times, I should say, it means sacrificing time with your own family in order to attend to the needs and the training of your Marines or your fellow cadets. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. If I could add a leadership trait, it would be JJ did tie buckles, plural, and I would add the word sacrifice. It would tie directly into unselfishness. You always have to put the needs of others before your own wants and your own desires. If I want to go to a movie this weekend as a cadet, but one of my subordinates, one of my peers needs me to help them, then guess what? I'm not going to the movies. I'm going to meet somewhere and we're going to study for our test or we're going to prepare or whatever it is they need. And that means I'm going to have to sacrifice something that I want. It doesn't mean that you put the needs of your subordinates before the task because the mission always comes first. One of the things that you'll hear over and over again throughout our leadership classes is troop welfare versus mission accomplishment. Mission accomplishment always comes first, just ahead of troop welfare. In the end, leaders put themselves last in the priority. There's a book out there by an author named Simon Sinek, and I've met Simon a couple of times. He has spent a lot of time with Marine enlisted and officers, and he wrote a book called Leaders Eat Last. He was amazed after spending his time with Marines how effective our leadership is and how he could take military, specifically Marine Corps leadership traits and principles and apply them to the business force. And many, many businessmen and women across the board have taken this book and used it to help them with their corporations, making sure that their employees are taken care of. A lot of times in the corporate world, it's the higher ups that get the big bonuses. They get the board members give themselves bonuses and extra time off, while their employees, those that are doing all the manual labor, are working through their weekend and extended hours with little to no pay. Leaders eat last.
I put all my Marines before myself in everything that I do. They're not eating, I'm not eating. I'm going to eat last. I expect my Marines to take care of their Marines to the left and right of them, as well as they take care of themselves. It's a key part of being a Marine and being effective in combat.
Being able to sacrifice anything to make sure that that Marine is well taken care of.
Being a drill instructor, we sacrifice to be sure that they are getting the best training available and possible to become a basically trained Marine.
I think that oftentimes we think about ourselves too much, and if we all just took a little time to get out and help each other, I think the world would be a better place.
I will give of myself whatever time I can to help my kids, the other kids in the community, to become better people.
I really think it's important that we give back to the community in which we serve. I go to the Humane Society every Sunday, and I basically just take all the adoptable dogs and get them out. We also help socialize so they become more adoptable.
Whether you're in the Marine Corps for 4 years, 20 years, 35 years, whatever it is, the unselfishness that it breeds in you from day one absolutely will stick with you.
Courage is your next leadership trait. As a young person, courage is going to be one of the more challenging leadership traits to adopt and develop and to incorporate. Courage allows you to perform effectively in spite of hardships. It's human nature not to put yourself in harm's way. It's human nature not to push yourself through adversity. Nobody likes the heat. Nobody likes the cold. Nobody likes to look out from the back of an airplane, realize that you're 30,000 feet above and that you're doing a high altitude, low entry parachute jump. But in the end, you've got to have the courage, trust me, to jump out of that airplane. It is not natural for a human being to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. It takes physical courage. And when we as civilians think about courage, as a young person, you might resort to war movies that you've seen where there's a soldier, sailor, airman, or marine who's attacking a machine gun nest all by himself without regard to his own personal safety because he's got the safety of his fellow Marines and soldiers in mind. Absolutely. Those are good examples of physical courage. Physical courage is acting without regard of your own physical welfare. In my personal opinion, I think pushing through adversity, as maybe if you're in a physical training environment and your body and your mind are telling you to quit, but you having the spirit and the self-discipline to push yourself further and further, those are great examples of physical courage. But moral courage, in my opinion, is the more challenging of the two. Standing up for your beliefs despite criticism, especially in a high school environment. When you roll around and you're seeing your peers act stupidly, behaving stupidly, saying stupid things, being disrespectful to their parents, to their bosses, to their teachers, and having the moral courage to stand up to another person and tell them that what they're doing is wrong is so much harder than charging head on into a machine gun nest. I promise you. As a young corporal, I was developing as a leader, and I have a situation that sticks out in me early in my leadership days where we were on a ship and our senior leaders had been up on the flight deck. That's where like all the helicopters and the planes and stuff are. And they had set up targets on the edge of the ship, and they were doing what's called FAM fire, familiarization firing, meaning they were shooting their rifles and pistols. When you are shooting your rifles, you're supposed to take your chevrons off of your collar because the buttstock of the rifle can scratch them off. So I'm standing in the chow line later on that day, and I look over and I see a staff sergeant, probably in his 30s. I am a young corporal in my early 20s, and I see that he's missing one of his chevrons. And it was just eating away at me because he's in a group full of other staff NCOs, and nobody has said something to him. So I'm talking to my buddies. I'm like, hey, man, look at this staff sergeant over there. He's missing his chevron. I need to go say something to him. And they're like, no, you're going to get your butt chewed. He's going to rip your head off, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, right is right, wrong is wrong. It took a lot of moral courage for me as a young corporal to walk up to a staff sergeant. But I did, and I was polite. And we've talked about tact throughout these periods of instruction. I was tactful. I was like, excuse me, staff sergeant. Listen, I believe you might have been one of the Marines up on the flight deck conducting fan fire, which is probably why you're missing one of your chevrons. I just wanted to let you know so that nobody else saw it. You would not believe the amount of appreciation that this staff sergeant showed me. He reached in his pocket, pulled his chevron out, had one of his buddies put it on his collar properly, and he was ready to go about his day. All of the other staff NCOs that were there didn't have the moral courage to say anything to him. And they were going to let this guy walk around and look like a chucklehead. And then he, the staff sergeant that was missing the chevron, started busting all of his buddies' chops for not having the moral courage. And that staff sergeant and I built a rapport. He wasn't in my unit, but me having the moral courage to say something to him set up a great rapport between the two of us, and he was able to help me out along the way throughout the rest of that deployment. It is very hard to have the moral courage to say something to somebody if they're not doing something that they are supposed to be doing, or if they're behaving inappropriately, or they're not setting a moral compass for others to follow. Physical courage, I'm not saying it's not difficult, but in my opinion, moral courage is the harder of the two.
If you have the courage and the internal fortitude to put your feet on those yellow footprints and make that journey to be a United States Marine, I don't personally see what could be a better accomplishment in your life.
You have taken the first step to becoming a member of the world's finest fight force, the United States Marine Corps. Do you understand? Yes, sir! Scream louder! Yes, sir!
I was the only girl from who decided to enlist and join the Marine Corps. Just the courage alone to go to the world's toughest physically and mentally demanding recruit training speaks for itself.
To me, courage is accomplishing a task or mission in the face of fear or adversity.
Courage isn't the absence of fear, but it's the will to push through that fear.
Getting ready to leave on deployment, everyone has that fear of the unknown, but overcoming that fear is the highest standard of courage.
Marines often find their courage through their brothers in arms. They might be scared to do something, but they know if their brother to their left and their right is relying on them to make the right decision, you know that you have to go in together.
The moral courage, when you know somebody's wrong, to just say something to let them know that they're wrong. And sometimes that's a lot harder than the physical courage.
To say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done, despite what others may think about you, is definitely looked upon with great respect.
All the leadership traits that the Marine Corps requires and demands of all Marines are not only warrior traits, but also citizen values. Everything that you do in the Marine Corps will transition with you once you get out, and they will be applied in all aspects of life.
Our next leadership trait is knowledge. If you think that your education is going to end after high school, you're sadly mistaken. You have to study to become aware of current events, military science, equipment, and the capabilities of your team. This doesn't just apply to the Marine Corps. It doesn't just apply to ROTC. It applies to any job or any team that you're a part of in college or in continuing education. You're going to be both technically and tactically proficient. You have to be knowledgeable of your job, and that's going to help you accomplish your task. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what your job is, then you are essentially useless to your employers. You have to know your people. You don't have to be just aware of what your own capabilities are. You're going to be able to know what the strengths and the weaknesses are of each individual on your team. And as a leader, your knowledge of them will help you use their skills in order to accomplish the mission. One of my Navy corpsmen in Iraq had previously served as a general electrician as a civilian. So when we're in Iraq and we're living in these god-awful remote conditions, we were able to take his experiences and his knowledge. We were knowledgeable of what he was and was not capable of. And the next thing you know, we've got electricity, we've got power, we've got lights, and it came not from his skills as a Navy corpsman, but his skills as an electrician. Knowing yourself and seek self-improvement is one of your leadership principles, and it ties directly into knowledge, knowing your teammates and what their capabilities are as well.
The more you know, the better off you are. Marines go out and fight wars, and their lives depend on the ability to know what they are doing.
I can train my Marines, and they can learn from what I know, and hopefully they'll strive to want to seek out more knowledge to make them better and more proficient at their jobs.
I didn't know what situation I was going to be in before we went to combat. I wanted to be 100% prepared. I took my own time every day to study everything I possibly would have to know.
Adapt, achieve, and overcome, right?
Yes, sir.
You give them all the tools. Once they go out there, they apply them. And their success is what makes us proud.
My MOS in the Marine Corps right now is a motor transport maintenance chief. Initially, I had no idea about mechanics, so I started to learn. I started to learn how to turn a wrench. I started to learn how to drop a fuel tank, and that helped me to progress as I went on in the Marine Corps.
They become successful. They become people that you want to hire, that you want to run businesses.
A well-informed Marine, I mean, that's golden.
Loyalty is a leadership trait that's very near and dear to many Marines. Loyalty is faithfulness to your country, to your organization, to your senior leaders, to your subordinates, and to your peers as well. Human nature, I'm bringing it up again, is a selfish nature. All right, we are self-preservers by trait. Our DNA says that we are supposed to do everything that we can to self-preserve. Loyalty goes against the grain. Loyalty is a leadership trait that if you develop it, and if you develop it properly, will become ingrained to you to where you are able to force yourself to take care of others before you take care of yourself. I just recently got a phone call from a Marine that I haven't spoken to, oh my gosh, maybe 8 to 10 years. Out of the blue, this Marine reached out to me. He's a civilian, but he knew that during our time in the Corps that I was over the moon loyal to him and the rest of the Marines in the unit. And I'm blessed that he felt comfortable enough reaching out to me out of the blue, knowing that I would be able to stop what I'm doing to help him work through what he needed to work through, because we had built that rapport and that bond with one another during our time served in Corps. Loyalty is the essence of serving your Marine Corps JROTC unit and supporting your school. As I record this, it's 2020, and I am saddened by the lack of faithfulness to our country. There are riots on the streets. There are partisan politics. There are a lot of things going on in our country that have divided us instead of unite us. I would ask that you take loyalty to your country with the utmost seriousness. A good leader does not allow personal opinions to interfere with the mission. Regardless of who is in charge, regardless of who is in office, a Marine is loyal to the Constitution and the President of the United States who is enforcing that Constitution. We are not loyal to a specific party. We are not loyal to a specific political affiliation, all right, or social club. We are loyal to the Constitution of the United States, and I've sworn an oath to uphold and defend that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I would ask that if you do not have loyalty to your country, that you take a look around at what is going on in the world today in the year 2020 and realize that our country must come first. In order to do that, we must put our senior cadets in charge, and we as senior cadets must make sure our subordinates are developing loyalty to our program, to our school, to our community, and to our country.
They tell you the first day you start, once a Marine, always a Marine, and they mean it.
The camaraderie and the brotherhood that's built naturally through the Marine Corps is something that's untouched anywhere I've ever seen.
The Marine Corps leads you to trust one another, and that trust builds the loyalty. Once you establish that connection with one another in combat or peacetime or through basic training, you never forget the individuals that displayed those traits.
Guys who made friends in World War II, till their deathbed, they were best friends. And it's the same thing in the Marine Corps now.
Loyalty for me is not only being loyal to your country, your corps, your unit, and the Marines in your unit, it's being loyal to yourself.
Even though I'm no longer an active duty Marine, knowing that my former colleagues are still sacrificing a great deal, putting themselves at risk, it's important for me to show that loyalty and supporting their efforts as much as I can.
The recon paddle is a tradition among reconnaissance units that I think dates back actually to World War II. When members of a reconnaissance unit will leave and finish their tour and move on, the other members of that Marines unit will come together to build them a paddle. It wasn't just about the 6 years that I served. It's about how it changed me forever, the transformative experience it was. For me, for the rest of my life, I'll always be a Marine. It'll be a part of me that always really cherishes the experience that I had.
Now here we go. I'm motivated. I motivate me and I motivate you. Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm spreads if you allow it to. Unfortunately, going back to human nature, negativity can also spread just as fast. I would probably say faster than positivity. Everybody today, especially with this social media world, with this 24-hour news cycle, our humanity has become so hyper-focused on the negativity. We always have something bad to say. We always have to put that comment out on Face Chat or Snapbook or InstaFace or Twizzler or TalkTick or whatever. But we need to get over that negative human nature aspect because we need to show interest and exuberance in the performance of our duties. It is very, very easy to be a negative Nancy and be a poo-poo face instead of remaining optimistic and cheerful. Excitement, motivation, how you carry yourself. You have to set a positive example at all times to your teammates. Never, ever should you express your disdain for a mission. At no time should you receive an order from a senior and then in front of your peers and then in front of your subordinates say, meh, this mission sucks. This is stupid, but we got to. Meh, meh, meh. I hate this crap. No, man, don't be doing that crap. If you do, A, it's going to spread. B, your subordinates are going to not look at just you differently, but they're going to look at the leader who gave you that job to accomplish a bit differently. And the next thing you know, you're all kind of doing the job halfway with a lack of enthusiasm. Nobody's excited about getting it done, and they're not going to apply themselves, and they're not going to do the job right. You want to make sure that even if you're not excited about doing something, that you show excitement. Listen, I'm not saying be fake. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying hype yourself up. I had a cadet last year who was just adamant about not drilling. He hated drill. And I had to remind him that through drill comes discipline. Through discipline comes bearing. Through bearing comes you getting hired at a job. None of that is going to happen unless you get excited and if you become enthusiastic about what you're doing. If you honestly believe that after 6 years of being a drill instructor, 3 at Parris Island and 3 training officer candidates at Quantico, that I was excited every single day to get up and teach drill, you are out of your mind. It's like Groundhog's Day. But I could never allow my cadets at OCS or my recruits at Parris Island see that I wasn't excited to teach them something or to train alongside them or to get out in the mud and in the cold and freeze my keister off. You have to remain positive. You got to psych yourself up, because if you don't, then you're going to drag everybody down with you.
Anything I do with enthusiasm. The way I speak enthusiastically so that my message is passed on to those who I want it to be passed on to, and they obtain the same level of enthusiasm.
Having enthusiasm in your unit and having the enthusiasm around the recruits is awesome, because it spreads that motivation to them and it encourages them to want to keep going and stay in the fight.
Enthusiasm, it spreads like wildfire, and people see it. If you're showing that you're not enthusiastic about a certain task that was given to you, it's going to come across as that particular task maybe not being as important as another one, which is definitely not the case, because everything we do as Marines is extremely important.
Marines are the few and the proud. We take the individuals who have the mindset to push no matter what, who want this no matter what.
If you come out here and you don't love being a Marine and you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to be successful.
We have our good days and we have our challenging days. And being able to maintain that poise and enthusiasm really sets a hugely important tone for the rest of the organization.
12 weeks. This is it, Jen. And it's over. Do not hold anything back.
Aye,
Well, let's go.
Well, there you have it. All 14 leadership traits. Before we close things out, once again, let's go over our acronym so that we can start to memorize the words. And then as we memorize our acronym and each individual leadership trait, we can take those definitions of those traits and apply them to our daily lives. Here we are back again with the J to the J to the D to the tie to the buckle. Rolling up first, we got J, justice. J, judgment. D, dependability. I, integrity. D, decisiveness. T, tact. I, initiative. E, endurance. B, bearing. U, unselfishness. C, courage. Remember, there's 2 kinds. K, knowledge. L, loyalty. And enthusiasm. Yut, yut. As we wind down this class and start to prepare for our quizzes and our tests, as we wind down this class, I want you to sit back and reflect. I want you to think about 2 to 3 leadership traits that you would like to develop. I would hope that you would want to develop them all. But what are 2 or 3 that right off the bat you think maybe you lack? And then for each one, I want to ask, what actions could you take as a first step towards that development? I hope that you are well this week, and I hope that you take the opportunity and let all of this information soak in order not only to prepare for your quizzes and not only to prepare for your tests, but to ensure that you are prepared to answer these questions in person during your uniform inspections, and most importantly, to apply them to your daily lives so that you, if you're not already leading, can develop these leadership traits. And then eventually we'll talk about our principles in order to help those that are around you. I'm always grateful for your time. I hope you have a great remainder of your week. And as always, Semper Fidelis, a yut yut, and a hoorah to you and to your family.